I don't think there's a hell of a lot I can do. We're at the mercy of the computer.
I got some magic happening. We're bouncing off Russian and French satellites. It may have faint signal.
How exactly are you going to negotiate that? What magic wand do you have? And usually the answer is, he doesn't have an answer.
That's a cock and bull story if I ever heard one.
How hard it is to admit the truth. Take him to the little room.
Remember he said you can't have manufacturing jobs in this country? You need a magic wand. Remember the famous? Well, I guess we found the magic wand.
If you watch Fox News, you are living on a different planet.
What is your major malfunction, numbnut?
I'm trying to think, but nothing happens.
Quiet, numbskull. I'm broadcasting.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen.
Oh, that's so good.
Another show. This is episode 18 for those of you who are tracking us. Those of you in China and on Facebook, both are against freedom of speech, by the way. Those of you who are tracking it, this is episode 18 of season 2. We are once again bringing truth and journalistic ethic to the masses. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Jim the Teacher. That guy over there is my brother. He is John Wick.
It's Joe Wick today.
He has a new computer with the N not working, so he's just Joe Wick today.
Yeah, take this one back. All right.
Yeah.
Whatever's going on, take this one back.
Complaining because it's free, huh, brother? It's free. So,
right, you can't complain.
So tonight's show is going to be a fabulous trip down a lot of educational pathways. We're going to be talking about things like Popovich, Columbus. We have Pugnando again. We have another episode of was it 8? Episode
I
8?
think 7.
7. And then I have a handful of things for the updates that we're going to dive in. A little bit of a change in plan today. I'm not feeling the best that I could. And so consequently, I am letting my brother Joe carry. I do actually have a brother Joe, but he's stealing his name tonight, identity theft. And we are going to have Joe over there fill in on two portions, and I'm just going to do the updates tonight because, I'm not feeling up to snuff. So let's start off with Popovich. Now, brother, I do have Popovich set up for you. I thought I did. Where did it go? I do. No, I see it there. I see it over there. Popovich. Yes, here we go. Popovich. You want to watch the whole thing? Is there something?
No, just the part where he racistly calls equates Italians and particularly Mussolini with Nazis.
It made me think a little bit beyond. I think the proclamation was obviously appropriate, important, needed, and all those sorts of things. But I'm a little confused about our city.
I didn't know you wanted that part.
Why it's indigenous.
You probably got the. Yeah, there you go. Wait, there you go. Indigenous Day. Here's getting to it.
I mean, he initiated a New World genocide. That's what he did. And beginning with him and what he set in motion and what followed meant the annihilation of every indigenous person. You know, it's like saying we should be proud of Hitler because we're German. I mean, it makes no sense. It's about Columbus. It's not about Italian Americans. And so there are a lot of states that have come out and scratched the Columbus Day and made it Indigenous Peoples Day. But in our city, are we that backward that we have school districts that do that? I'm amazed, just amazed.
He's also an idiot. That's enough. All right. Now this fool, and I don't mind calling him a fool because, that's what he is. Usually the left, the cultists on the left, they got some religion. They got the Marx religion. That's the Marx cult. They got the global warming cult. They got the
Right.
Democratic government cult. They got the baby killer cult. Then there's of course the government cult. I called it government cult, but I was corrected by the real brother of liberty, Brother Joseph. We called it the bureaucrat cult. That's a good way too. But this guy is just a bit progressive. Now there's another thing, another group we can call of these quote progressives that jump on the bandwagon for this progressive nonsense. And you know our rule: the bigger the progressive, the bigger the pervert, right? The bigger the progressive Clinton, the bigger the pervert. He just got out of the hospital. It allows him to rape, to sexually abuse people, and so forth. Harvey Weinstein. The Clinton. Look all all the people, all the women that he was abusing. Hillary Clinton. Now she might not have been abusing any women, but the bigger the progressive, the bigger the pervert. Look at the millions and millions and billions that she stole, selling out the State Department. So that's our rule. So what's this creep's angle? Well, I was thinking of things, and one of the things that they always call us is like white nationalists. And like, what's that mean? Because we're white, right? And we're nationalists because we believe in America. America is the anti-nation. Okay, it's the only nation in the world where anybody can come in. Maybe you can say Jamaica, but anybody can come in, or maybe you can say also Brazil. Maybe a few others, but it's the premier of all those nations, where anybody can come in and become a American. There is no ethnic group. There is no creed. There is no particular other than your willing love for freedom for you to become an American. So it's the anti-nation. It's the anti-nationalism of anything. But they call us this white nationalism. I'm thinking like, what do we should call them back? Because they just want to start the name calling. What should we call them back? I'm thinking, you know what? White narcissists. That would be a good start. So they call us white nationalists. We'll just call them what they are, white narcissists. Or for like this guy, rich, spoiled white boy, because that's what he is. He's just a rich, spoiled white boy. I'm going to get to him about what he's covering up in a second. But I wanted to go on while we're talking about this white nationalism. Is why do they call us this white nationalists? Well, they want to try and slander us with the Nazis again, right? Because that's then you're the National Socialists. Now let's go back in time to actually what happened. Well, that moron Marx, that fool who we keep hearing about what a genius he was economically when he wasn't, because he wouldn't take a bath, and that's why he was covered in boils, including on his pee-pee, and he was too stupid to figure out that the reason why he was covered in boils is because he refused to take a bath. But again, we're told again and again how he's an economic genius. Well, he predicted that because of his economic nonsense, that the world worker classes would rise up and cause these revolutions in all these countries. And it never happened. The workers in England went off and fought in World War I. The workers in Germany went off and fought in World War I for Germany. The workers in Russia went off and fought in World War I for Russia. The workers in Italy went off and fought for Italy. It never happened. So they had to revamp the communist/socialism stupidity. And so what they did was a good old El Duce, the Italian, said, I know what I'll do is I'll make it socialism, but for nations. And then he developed his own little fascistic version of it. But of course, communism, socialism was always going to be authoritarian and a dictatorship. It was always the lie that some idiot Politburo or some bunch of morons who were so smarter than everybody else was going to take all power and then dole it out, make everything a dopey utopian society, and then give back power. Never going to happen, right? So it was always going to be some form of fascism or authoritarianism. But good old Mussolini started the first breakthrough to make it national socialism. And of course, then his buddy Adolf Hitler, of course, a socialist, which we've proven again and again and again, made German nationalism socialism. So, the slight on us, the slander on us, calling us white nationalists is to tie us to the Nazis, is once again the left showing, the lie of the left, projecting their evil upon us. Of course, just like, the slavers were the slave party with the Democratic Party, and they want to call Republicans the slavers and say we're the racists. No. That was a Democrat Party thing. Everybody who did that, everybody slave owner was the Democrat, right? You want to get rid of racism today, get rid of the Democratic Party. That's the last slaveholding institution still existed. You know, just like with the indigenous peoples. Who are the indigenous peoples that were abused by America? Will have to be good old Andrew Jackson, the Tale of Tears, who was, of course, wiped out 4,000 Indians, you know, as they had to relocate because he was kicking them off their lands. Also took their black slaves because the Indians had slaves. Don't want to bring up that little inconvenient historical fact, but that's what happened. But who was that? What was Andrew Jackson? That was the Democrat Party again. So who was doing all this evil? It was the Democrat Party, the so-called progressives. Who reintegrated the military? Who was the biggest? Who revived the KKK? Who had that movie played? The great Democrat president Woodrow Wilson played reintegrated the KKK and the abuses of the KKK towards blacks. So I just wanted to set that record straight. Pardon me?
You said the birth, like the movie was The Birth of a Nation.
Birth of Nations. There you go. Thanks. I lost it there. So today's object, of course, is while we're going to do it, is this slander against the Italians, against the greatest Italian there's ever been, the greatest man in the last 2,000 years, good old Christopher Columbus. So we're going to do a little bit more reading from Christopher Columbus, setting the record straight, because he makes the charge that it was Columbus that started the wiping out of and the slave taking. And I just wanted to, while I take the chance, to read just a little bit of Columbus from his own words, instead of the lies that we hear from the left and the fake history. In it, for example, starts where he starts the slave trade. Now, this is from his second voyage. He wrote a memo to the king, an actual memorandum to the king. And in it, he points out, his run-in with the Caribbees, when he ran into a bunch of islands that were inhabited by the Caribbees, where we get the name cannibal, and the reason why he took these particular people as slaves. Last time we talked about them, the doctor, we heard from the doctor who was on this voyage, the fleet physician who was on this, and they would find things like a human being's neck being cooked. Well, here's his rationale for taking slaves. He goes, but as amongst all these islands, those inhabited by the cannibals are the largest and the most populous. I have thought it expedient to send to Spain men and women from the islands which they inhabit, in the hopes that they may one day be led to abandon their barbarous custom of eating their fellow creatures. By learning the Spanish language in Spain, they will much earlier receive baptism and ensure the salvation of their souls. Moreover, it will be great happiness to the Indians who do not practice the above-mentioned cruel custom, when they see that we have seized and led captive those who injure them, whom they dread so much that their name among alone fills them with horror. So what is Christopher Columbus doing by starting the slave trade? Well, he's only protecting the poor, nice indigenous peoples who don't eat people. Right? You fools, right? All right, now I just wanted to bring that out. That was his memo to the king about why he took them and started slaves. Because actually, the Catholic Church came out against slavery and they're actually bulls against slavery. That's why they call them serfs instead of slaves, although they were still the same thing, indentured servants. Now, I did want to also point out some of the other calamities that he put it. So, one of the things that happened, he left 39 or 40 actual Spaniards there on his first trip in a particular fort. They don't know actually where it was. It's somewhere, maybe in Haiti or the Dominican Republic. He left 39 Spaniards there in fort, and he told the Spaniards, don't touch the women, because of course they were all running around naked, including the little girls, and that's why I'm going to get to Popovich in the end. Don't worry, just file this in your little report. So the Indians were running around naked, and he told the Spanish people to don't touch the Indians, and then he left, and he came back, and they found all the Spaniards that they left there dead. Now they left. I'm going to call him Chief Gacamoko. because I can't pronounce his name, but he left a chief there who actually, considered him a brother. And they went and found, what happened. Now, the reading from, again, the chief physician, he said, we went on the same day to the site of the settlement. This referring to the settlement where they left the Spaniards, the 40 Spaniards. And when we arrived, we found many Indians who had regained their courage, bartering gold with our men. They had been bombarded to the extent of a mark. We also learned that they had shown where the bodies of 11 of the dead Spaniards laid, which were already covered with the grass that had grown over them. And they all, with one voice, asserted that the Cosmopo and Marie had killed them. But notwithstanding all this, we began to hear complaints that one of the Spaniards had taken 3 women to himself and another 4, from whence we drew the inference that jealousy was the cause of the misfortune that had occurred. So basically, because the Spanish had violated what Columbus had told them to do, the Indians killed them. Now, when they get to the chief, the surgeon of the fleet and myself being present, the admiral told Guacamole that we were skilled in the treatment of human disorders, because he was in his hut pretending to have an injury on his leg. And wished that we would show us his wound. He replied that he was willing, upon which I said it would be necessary that we should, if possible, go out of the house, because we could not see well on account of the place being darkened by the throng of people. To this he consented, I think more from timidity than inclination, and left the house leaning on the arm of the admiral, meaning Columbus. After he was seated, the surgeon approached him and began to untie the bandage. Then he told the admiral that the wound was made with a cabaya, by which he meant with a stone. When the wound was uncovered, we went up to examine it. It is certain that there was no more wound on that leg than on the other, although he cunningly pretended that it pained him much. Ignorant as we were of the facts, it was impossible to come to a definite conclusion. Now, so if really Columbus was a mass murderer that he was, at this point, he would then execute the chief, and he didn't. Why? Because he knew that the Spaniards that he left there were rapacious, and they went after the girls and and remember, children too, because they're all running around naked. Now, eventually, he would restore relations with the chief, go on to create the settlement there, a second settlement, and of course, adopt this chief's son as one of his 3 children, right? So, and we take him to Spain. Now, when he talks about cruelly, when Popovich talks about cruelly executing people and stuff like that, yeah, that did happen. Why did that happen? Well, what happened is Columbus, on a second voyage back, came back with a bunch of Hidalgos. These are the rich white Spanish lords, right? And these people were cruel, evil people. Right, they would do things like, and from the actual, I'm not gonna read them, but some of the original things, they would cut the heads off of the Indians. They would they had these really terrible dogs that would bite. And there was one incident where they bit and debowed a particular Indian, right? And so a bunch of these Indians, a particular one named Roland, one of these Hidalgo Spanish lords, took off into the interior and revolted, and he would and start raping and abusing the children, which was their custom, because to them, they thought this is a free for all, right? Columbus, as a bad governor, eventually hung 2 of these idiots, and that's what Bobadillo, this another Hidalgo who was sent by the crown, saw when he came into port, and that's why he arrested him, put Columbus in chains. And well, that's the reason. The real reason why is because they're never going to trust Columbus, because he was a foreigner and he was Italian, and he was, of course, a commoner, right? And from that, you get both the idea that Columbus somehow started the genocide that was committed against the Indians, and was cruel, cutting off arms and executing. Now, he was not. He only did that when they harmed the poor innocent Indians. His whole goal was to protect the innocent Indians, so he could baptize them, Christianize them, and bring them into the communion of Christianity. Who did he enslave? The idiot Caribbeans who were eating people. Who did he execute? The bad Hidalgos, right? Now, to be fair to the poor Cortez type and Hidalgos, when they would go over to find the Mexicali Empire and the also called the Aztec Empire, and they would see mounds and mounds of these dead bones. What the Mexicali Empire and the Aztecs were doing, where they were brutally conquering the other Indians who weren't as brutal as they were taking them and feeding them into this sacrifice machine, ripping out their hearts, wearing their skin, and doing all this horrific torturing stuff. So the Cortez and Hidalgos, as bad as they were not as bad as the indigenous people there that were mass murdering and torturing all the other indigenous people there. So really, 1492 October 12 is really the saving of indigenous people today, and Saint Christopher should be given the credit he did. Now, only a progressive pervert like Popovich and his types would come up and try and turn it over. Why? Why is it? It's just like Bill Gates saying that, Epstein was an interesting person. Why is Epstein an interesting person? He is a pedophile who blackmails other pedophiles. What's so interesting about a pedophile who blackmails other pedophiles? Why are these progressives so insistent upon defending the cannibals, the creepy, wacky cannibals, and the people that are taking? Remember, we're talking naked Indian children, right, and naked Indian girls, and having them raped by rich white Spanish lords. Why would they think that that's a bad thing? Well, maybe somebody should be looking into that Mr. Popovich guy. Maybe somebody should be looking into his emails, see what's going on in his world. Because you know our rule, Brother James, the bigger the pervert, the bigger the progressive. It's direct. So the bigger the progressive, the bigger the pervert. It's always the way. It's always the way. I just wanted to set the record straight on that. And now, every time you see some freaking nut job call us a white nationalist, you shoot them. Hey, why don't you shut up, you spoiled rich white boy? Because you're nothing but a white narcissist. How about that, brother?
Sounds good, brother. Sounds solid. You got some good reactions from that segment. And a lot of people out there don't realize the importance of Columbus either. They like to lay down and just say, kind of minimize his risk and say everyone knew the world was round and that the Greeks knew it. And they like to, talk about how anybody could have done it. But if anybody could have done it, why didn't they? Why hadn't they done it? It's not like the need to get to India was these countries, Spain, Portugal, they all wanted to get to India. France, they all wanted to get to India. They all wanted to take over the spice trade from the Venetians. They all wanted a piece of the pie. Amsterdam, the Netherlands, they all wanted it. Yet none of them did it before 1492. And it took the Spanish to send Columbus. And so we look at that and we have to say this is a major accomplishment. He went further west than anybody. I mean, I know that there was people who the Vikings, Leif Erikson, they were doing it, but Leif Erikson went and he went through Iceland and then he went over to Nova Scotia. Columbus, he stopped at Canaries and then he went straight over. And so this is a big risk that he took. He took a major risk. No one had done it before. The Vikings knew it could be done. Minus that first one who was gone, they all knew it could be done. So we very easily just tossed that away. And it's a pretty big risk that he took in the first place. And we like to minimize that, but we shouldn't. We should look at that as for what it is. And I got to say, the other big side of that is because he went, the entire Western world, the Western Hemisphere was settled by Europeans, bringing European Western civilization to those continents, and thus seeding what would be the United States of America. I mean, it's like phenomenal that people want to downgrade Columbus when without Columbus they wouldn't be here on this. I lost you, brother. Wouldn't be there on this continent. There you are. You're back. So I mean, I think it's like very easy to toss it aside, but the reality is he is completely a necessary part of our society. And I'll mention this because one of the other things that you didn't mention is they like to throw the
I'm still there.
genocide
Can you
thing.
hear me?
Oh, yeah, I can hear you. They like to throw the genocide thing on there, like, oh, he's responsible for the genocide. You know what? I got bad news for you. If you really want to blame somebody for the genocide, first, who are you blaming for COVID? Second, I want to throw out there the Chinese were the ones who are ultimately responsible for that, because the diseases that we brought to the New World came from China. So if you still there, brother, or did I lose you again? Yeah, they came from China through the Silk Route, and people just want to ignore that stuff. But Europe already suffered through the smallpox, already suffered through the Black Plague. We lost it. We lost all
I
these
lost you
people
for a bit, but
that's right. But I was just referencing how all these diseases came from China, and they want to ignore that. Anyway, I'm going to go on to my segment for the updates. I want to warn everybody, we're about to use some bad language. You're about to hear some bad language. Brother, I don't know if you realize this or not, but we have in Italy, the Italians have done it again, brother. The Italians have done it again. It's like an Italian night, let me tell you. The Italians have done it again.
Viva Italy.
Viva
Italia.
Or it could be just the simple fact that a bunch of Americans or Trumpists, a bunch of Trumpers went over to Italy and decided to do this. So it must be an evil right-wing plot, conspiracy, or the Italians have gotten the message too. So here's the message, brother. That's the American Embassy.
Fuck Joe Biden! Fuck Joe Biden! Fuck Joe Biden! Fuck Joe Biden!
There's the obligatory bird too.
Fuck Joe Biden!
Now they're doing it as they're going past the American Embassy, and of course we don't like it when somebody says, gives the bird to the American Embassy, but we can certainly respect and John, I just want to make it clear, that was not fuck Joe Biden. That was let's go Brandon. I don't know if anybody heard that.
No.
Let's go Brandon.
No, I think it was the other one. I think it was what you said first.
Yeah. So
well, they're actually rioting against the vax passports that are requiring in Italy, and I think in France too. It's a big movement, and like in New York City almost, wherever they're trying to do it. So the Italians are leading the way again.
Yeah, the Italians are. It's a big, because they're also expressing their feeling towards Biden because of his vaccine mandate. So John,
I guess they didn't vote for him either.
Yeah, well, you never know. They might have.
Yeah, they probably.
So I was doing some research on one of the shows or the events tonight. I was going to talk about in a minute. I'll get to it, but I was talking about protesters. So I decided to protesters breaking into U.S. governmental buildings. Now the top stories on all these. This is the Google story. Of course, all refer back to January 6th. Now, please keep in mind the generic model or generic set of questions. Google search. Protesters breaking into U.S. governmental buildings. So I said, let's try without U.S. for a second. And I want to point out that then they have the Armenian government building, armed protesters storm Oregon Capitol. Thousands of protesters are broken into U.S. government again, January 6th, except for the Armenian thing and the Oregon thing. It's pretty much standard fare for the left. This is what they talk about, right? It's all about January 6th. Meanwhile, just this last week, I don't know if you're familiar with this, brother, but the People vs. Fossil Fuels group have been protesting up and down the streets in Washington, D.C., and this is the inside the interior building. I'll put it up to a big screen for you. Protesters, brother, who are sitting inside the building. They didn't get in there because they were invited, by the way.
Did anybody shoot them?
No, I'll get to that. So the other side of it is here's the same group trying to get in right here. Let me put this up. All right. So you can see them pushing through, brother. Do they look like they're pushing through? This is just last week. This is just last week. Right?
It's like an insurrection or something, James.
It's like an insurrection, yes. Yes, that's
oh my God,
exactly
it's
what
a
it
capital?
looks
It's
Yeah,
the worst
right?
thing democracy's ever seen.
Yeah, right. So now I want to switch. Now people are walking away. There's a problem. You know why people are walking away, brother? Because they're not using guns against them. What they're using is tasers, brother.
Ah.
They're not using guns. They're using tasers against the protesters. Isn't that something? Isn't that something, huh? So I want to just point out the hypocrisy. I wonder if there will be a commission to talk about the people versus fossil fuels, and what the consequence of that's going to be, because these people are, breaking, pushing. They sent a couple of the guards, the cops there to the hospital. They did all kinds of destruction of property, and I'm sure they're not going to face any consequences for this whatsoever. Right?
I wonder if that craphead Liz Cheney was doing the committee at that time.
I don't know. Maybe. It's completely possible with these people, brother. It's completely possible. So the next side of this is I wanted to mention about how if you notice these four, and we did. This last week I did a thing on Governor Murphy and Jack Ciattarelli in the debate, and I talked about how I did several things on them where I mentioned about the different questions and answers that were being answered by Jack, and I did a breakdown of it. But Murphy's there. He's one of the four governors, and what they're going to try to do is they're going to try and keep track of all the purchases within the area. I don't know if you're familiar with this brother, but apparently the federal government doesn't do this. And these four states, New York, Connecticut, New Jersey, and Pennsylvania, your state and my state, are going to be sharing information in this regard. It's definitely something that's a concern. Definitely something, they're going to be sharing this information. Why? To go after people who, these criminals who own guns, which is us. But because these are some of the states that have the most strictest gun laws in the country. And they reference that in here, and they just toss it off as, oh, yeah, we got strict gun laws, but, it's not working. They basically say it's not working. The next thing I want to dive in on is, again, we're going to have to go to Australia. For them, if they can't talk about COVID in Australia. They can't put down their leaders. It's against the law. They'll get in trouble, right? But they can certainly wreck on Joe Biden. So listen to this lady's, reality check with him.
With old mate Joe Biden. And this week, the US president, the leader of the free world, was angry. Old man yelling at clouds angry.
Democracies in the world today than we did 15 years ago. Fewer, not more, fewer.
There's that dementia again.
Yeah.
Okay, Joe, just calm down. I think we'd all feel better if the dude with the nuclear codes wasn't prone to wild and bouts of anger. So it was almost a relief to see incoherent whispering Joe make an appearance.
Keep people employed. I mean that sincerely. But pay your fair share.
What is going on with this guy?
Brutal.
Let's go back to angry Joe yelling at clouds.
I wanted them to see the ability of the human mind to rationalize cannot be underestimated.
Yes, he's completely fine, folks. 81 million votes, cognitively sound and up to the job.
Again, you gotta hand it to the Australians, right?
Oh, brutal.
Yeah. Anyway,
that's the best news I've seen all
my piece here. I'm gonna pass it off to you, brother. Can you, if you can, I can't hear you, but you can hear me. So if you don't mind taking it from there, I appreciate
All right.
it.
So we're going to do Pugnando Pro Dio Part 7, which is our connection of the dots to prove scientifically, historically, that the words of Jesus Christ were from God, because no man could come up with these things. And if it was a man's words, it wouldn't have had the out and out effects that they did. So now these words that we're going to use today are what we've talked about before. It's called the freedom gospel. John 15, 15:15. And in it, it's the one where he says, I no longer call you slaves, because a slave does not know the mind of his master. Instead, I call you friends. For everything I learned from the Father, I have made known to you. Now, it's the freedom gospel. And we call that because for the first time in history, people are not slaves. God is telling them that they're not slaves, they're his friends. Now, of course, this was such a radical idea, and maybe I'll have to do a part 2 where we talk a little bit about the history of the translation of that word slave into servant, because it came in through through all our history as servant, because it was too radical of a concept that you were not slaves. God is telling you you're not slaves, and so they use servant instead to kind of hide that fact. And what we know from the Greek, there's only one word for slave. It's doulos, and so it is what it is. It was slave. He says, I do not call you slaves. This, of course, sparked the whole Friends of Jesus, which is the Quakers, and we talked a lot about that in the past, about how the 1600s and the Clarendon Code and the development of the rights of consciousness and your right to religion resulted in the founding of America, the founding of Penn's Wood, Pennsylvania, and would eventually result in the American Revolution. But those words in particular, though, are the connecting the dots. That's the freedom gospel. The idea that he's not calling us slaves, that we're not slaves, that we are now friends of Jesus, is such a radical concept. No human being could come up with it. Now, to be fair, there have been some ideas that were similar to that from Greek and the Romans that I'll get to in a second. But before that, I'm going to take a little step back to Jordan Peterson. Jordan Peterson, made a very brilliant guy, made one of the dumbest things I've ever heard him say, though, is in the defense of hierarchies. He said everybody knows that hierarchies are better. Now, what he's referring to is his little lobster story. So apparently, the limbic system in the human mind is about 750 million years old, and it's the same limbic system that's in lobsters. And he makes the point that the reason why this is important is because we know serotonin works on lobsters, and we use pills based on this in psychiatric medicine because it's such a primordial part of the human brain that it's the same in lobsters as it is in us. And so, for example, the lobster, so Mr. Big Lobster, they fight over a particular patch of the ocean, and the biggest lobster wins, and then they create a pecking order, a hierarchy. And in the hierarchy, there's a top one and a low one. And then the girl lobsters outsourced the natural selection by choosing the alpha, the top of the pecking order. And his point is that hierarchies are great because they're part of a human society, because they're part of our brain system, and that we've had this for 750 million years, and therefore the great white hierarchy is good. Now, he's wrong. And why is he wrong? Well, hierarchies are horrific. Hierarchies might work in some limited areas, but that's not what we have in America, and that's never worked. And actually, if you look through human history, it's not so much a hierarchy as a pyramid. We talked about this before we knew about Jordan Peterson, and we called it the pyramid. All of human history is the pyramid. Why is the pyramid so good? Because it's Pharaoh at the top, right? And everybody is a slave down to the bottom, right? Everybody is some degree of slave. Only Pharaoh is God, and only Pharaoh is free. And you can say a thing with king or an emperor or whatever you want to put the God, the pretend God on top of it. There's only one person that's free. Everybody else is a slave of some nature or not. So when we did this like years ago, we would call it as the pyramid, but it would be Jordan Peterson's hierarchy versus the best way is the Last Supper. All the Last Suppers you see, Leonardo's Last Supper, where you have a flat system where you have Jesus at the center, but it's flat. Or, for example, King Arthur and the Round Table, right? And you have a flat society. Now, if you look through history, and you look at for example, military here, it's one of our little fortes, is military here. You can say the Persians were defeated by the Greeks. Why were the Greeks? Because human beings had more value, had armor and shields. The Persians didn't believe in that, and so a few Persians, a few Greeks defeated the Persians. Now the Greeks, though, they used a phalanx. They used a Greek dancing comes from everybody put your left foot in, everybody put your right foot in, comes from the Greek from the phalanx because Greek militaries, they would have one set phalanx, a shield wall that was shaped in an arrow, and they were locked in and nobody could move. Now, when the Romans came, and that was okay for Athenian democracy, you could do that, and for less democratic systems like the Spartan system, but again, because people had value, they had a military superiority. Now but they were completely wiped out and defeated by the Romans. Why? Because the Romans, once they got rid of their king, they created a 3-tier system of the patricians, the knights, and the plebes. And they had a much more flatter society. And what that meant, and translated to in the military realm, is that you could have your Roman legionnaire. He had a 5-foot front and a 2.5-foot shield, just like the Greeks had a shield, but he had a responsibility for that 5-foot front. And so he could do what had to be done to keep that 5-foot front defended and attacking. And so what they could do is they could attack on the flanks. They could go out and attack on the flanks, and they would defeat, and they did. Scipio defeated every phalanx that they ever faced, plus every barbarian army, and it's the Roman Republic. Although Augustus and a few who's our favorite, Claudius, defeated the Brits. It was really the Roman Republic that conquered the Mediterranean, and once it became the Roman Empire, and they became just another barbarian army, and they eventually, that was the death knell of the Roman civilization, and they became just another pyramid with the emperor on top and everybody a part of slaves. So they were missing one ingredient that would turn the Roman military into into the American military today. They had it, but then it broke. It fell down because they didn't. It was overcome by that. Because the words of Jesus Christ had not inculcated enough. They did not believe that they were all equal. It would take again till 1776 and the American Revolution before you get the concept of the political concept of we are all created equal. And then you can see the American military and the difference in the American military versus every other military on the planet today and that there's ever been. For example, the German military, which is the world's greatest military other than ours, in World War II, would push autonomy down to the captain level. But we, in the American military, would push it down to into the individual level. So you would see that they would have you would see it on the transport ships when they were going to take an island. You would see them out, or when they were going to do D-Day. You would see a big sand picture or a big map of all the objectives. And the officers are telling the men all the way down to the lowest private what the objective is. And so the American military, unlike any other military, functions better without officers and even better without sergeants some way, because everybody knows what the objective is. And so when you kill off all the other generals and kill off all the lieutenants and kill off all the majors and the captains and the sergeants and the men still know what to do, and they achieve it. For example, in D-Day, the Brits panicked and dropped their gliders, dropped the 101st and the 82nd Airborne all over the place. And instead of making their drop zones, they were dropped in 1s and 2s and 3s, just to happen to be on top of one of Hitler's armored divisions. So two lightly armored American divisions dropped everywhere, held down and destroyed a German division because they're Americans. What they do? They didn't need organizations. They got together in ones and twos and ad hoc groups and just attacked because they knew basically what they had to do: kill Germans. And only the American military can do it. It's no accident, though, that the freer you are, the more powerful you are militarily, right? And so and so Jordan Peterson is absolutely wrong. Hierarchies are not good. Flat is better, and there's a reason. One of the things that woke me up to the idea that so-called intellectuals are a bunch of morons and you should never listen to them was this idiot named Christopher Hitchens, and he would go on these debates against Christians about how bad and evil Christianity was. Of course, he would never, and religion was in general, but of course he would never do that over in, say, in the Middle East where they would kill him. He would only do it over here where it's safe because we believe in things like freedom of speech. One of the dumb things that he would say is, as an atheist, I dare say, there's nothing that you can say as a religionist that I can't say. And I'm always thinking, like, why does somebody just shout out the one thing he could never say as an atheist, which are these simple words? We hold these truths as self-evident. All men are created equal and are endowed by their creator with certain inalienable rights: life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That foundation, no atheist can ever say, but no other person of another religion can say. Only the religion that says that because God said himself, hey, I don't call you slaves. You are not slaves. I call you friends. Because a slave doesn't know the mind of his master. And I've told you everything the Heavenly Father has told me to tell you. That working on the human mind, breaking the hard-hearted human mind throughout history for 2,000 years, allowed Jefferson to write down that crazy, unhuman thing. The idea that we're all created equal. And what does that allow? Well, just like with Columbus says that God opened up his mind, just like Joel Osteen, and he deserves $50 million. I would give him $50 million because he's such a sweetheart. Because he's such a sweetheart, right? Says again and again, you and God are a majority. God put dreams in each one of our hearts, and our job is to take a step in faith and on those dreams. And that's why hierarchies destroy humans and are no good. And these flat systems that we have, that we've instituted in America, are so great. There's nothing new under the sun except the words of Jesus Christ and America, because of course that's a political expression of the words of Jesus Christ. And look at it now. As they destroy America and want to go back to barbarism, it's the same nonsense again. Sodom and Gomorrah, blah, 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 and all this. Killing babies, blah, blah, blah. All the same nonsense comes right back. The only thing new under the sun are the words of Jesus Christ and the United States of America. And that is the scientific historical proof of the existence of that Jesus Christ was who he said he was. We call it the freedom gospel for a reason. John 15:15. Go look at it. You are no longer slaves. You are the friends of Jesus. And that is your Pugnando part. So, brothers of liberty, go be free, because you and God are a majority.
Excellent, brother. I do want to go back to one of my updates because I got cut off. I had to cut myself off because of my sound issues. I did want to go into this a little bit more. The comment about the states and the gun laws and them sharing information between them about, the information, this crime data, this data on who owns what. They have some of the strictest gun laws, and this is from Guns of America, strictest gun laws in the country. and they're still dealing with a violent crime wave that has swept the rest of the nation. And rather than consider how their gun laws have failed to deter violent criminals, these states have sought to blame neighboring states for their persistent problems. So they're not looking at themselves as having an issue. They're looking at their neighbors. They're looking at places like I don't know, go as far south as Alabama, wherever people, God-fearing Americans, are able to own firearms and not have to feel like they're prisoners of the government. This is they're trying to like get this nationwide, and honestly, it's the data that they want to share is not information that they should have, because the problem isn't any amount of data that they want to gather. The problem is in the states, when you criminalize gun ownership and you make Americans feel like they're criminals, and we can't protect ourselves, and you take away the cops and you take away the ability for the cops to do their job, like has been done across these 4 states with the defund movement. You're going to see, and you put these cops into the position where if they're doing their job, they're facing criminality. Even the cops who, yes, okay, there's bad cops, but there's majority are good cops, and you're shutting those good cops down, and that's the problem. That's part of the problem. The other problem is you've also put a whole bunch of criminals on the street, and that's still another issue. I also wanted to mention real quick, I'll do it real quick, that there's China just tested their hypersonic missile, which whether it really worked or not, we don't really know. Anything you get from them isn't really worth listening to.
I thought they said that it just came down like 20 miles away from where it was supposed to, but still circled still orbited the Earth.
It's what they said, but these are the same people who said there wasn't a virus that came from Wuhan, and then have bought the entire WHO. And there's a whole list of things that I could go into that I'm going to save for the next show, that go into how the media campaign, the China they spend more money on their media than I think they do on their military, and that's part of it is their interlaced ability into the different markets around the world, especially in the western half of the world, where the Western civilization side of it. So they've been able to use their own system against us. But that's, I'll cover that in our next show, I promise. I do want to play a clip from the North Carolina Lieutenant Governor. He was on John Solomon Reports. This is his about 30-second spiel. I want you to hear what he says. I feel like he sums up exactly how most Americans are feeling right now. He does it in such a succinct way, a clear, identified way, that for independents, Republicans, and many Democrats who are feeling about the way our country is today. If it'll play for me. And it's not going to play. Another technology issue. There it is.
Since that moment you uttered that, more and more Americans are getting educated there's a part of America that's trying to move us towards a big government socialist program.
Absolutely. We can see it in every facet of the government. We can see it in the total debacle at the federal level. What's going on with our economy right now, with our inflation, and what's going on with the border, what's going on what went on in Afghanistan and will probably continue to go on in Afghanistan. We can see it in this movement to intimidate American citizens.
Yeah.
Intimidate parents because they're speaking up at school board meetings. Intimidate me because I'm speaking up against pornography in our schools, and because I have the absolute audacity to speak up for my deeply held religious convictions on social issues. And so we see it all the time. And I can tell you this right now, John, Americans are sick of it.
Yeah, they are
sick of it. They are tired of being browbeat. I said this back in my speech back in 2018 in front of the Greensboro City Council. The average American citizen, law-abiding citizen, the guy or gal that gets up every day, goes to work, pays taxes, tries to do it honest. We are the ones who always get kicked in the teeth. our rights get restricted, our businesses get destroyed. We are the ones who are always getting browbeat, and the whole time it's going on, the government at the federal level, the state level, at all levels are picking our pockets for their socialist agenda. People in this country are tired of it. I'm tired of it. The people of this state are tired of it. I'm tired of it. My team's tired of it. It's time for us to stand up and fight back.
Yeah, and you've always had that fighting spirit. I remember that first video that put you into the national spotlight. People know you're a fighder, and
it's not stopping. So I just had to close it because it won't stop. I have to tell you, John, he succinctly nailed it. I don't know how you feel about it, but I feel like he laid out the biggest complaints that we have in our country today. He identifies them very, very well. We are fed up. A lot of Americans are fed up, and we have an election in Virginia this November. We have an election here in New Jersey, and there's a whole bunch of little elections around the entire country for your school boards, for your town councils, for your mayors. They're all over the place. So we want to go to the ballot box and start turning over these offices to people who are going to fight for our rights and stop dipping their hands in our pockets. I know I'm fed up with it just like he is. And, South Carolina, North Carolina, I'm sorry, is just one more example. What he said isn't just for North Carolina. It's really for all of us. We're all suffering with what's going on in our country today. And I think that, I wanted to bring that out because I think he clearly, like I said, lays it out. We should use that as a model for speaking out and just ask the question, what's going on so great in our country today with the Democratic Party, the people who are running it? What are they doing that's so great? Are they doing anything to help us? No, they're doing stuff to help their friends. Or ask the other question, are you better off from a year ago than you are today? Is your life, are you looking forward to the next day? Are you looking forward to next week? Are you looking forward to next month? Are you looking forward to anything in your future compared to where you were last year at this time? And I'll tell you, last year this time, the economy was in better shape despite the fact that we were in the middle of a pandemic. People weren't working, and our economy wasn't as bad as it is now. Inflation wasn't out of control. I'll save it also for the next show, but this idea, this supply chain, is not because the ports have to be open 24/7, John. It's partly because of regulation, that big government regulation that he referenced, that people aren't talking about. Yes, I know there's only 18-year-olds aren't allowed to drive tractor trailers. That's not the problem. But all these ships are over in California. They want to come into the ports. You know why? They can't get the stuff out of the port into America fast enough. There's a bottleneck at the crossing into California, from California into Nevada, into Arizona. There's a blockage there. There's a buildup right there because truckers, there's only certain kinds of trucks that can drive in California, brother. They have a law that requires you to have all engines of your tractor trailers that can't be more than 10 years old.
Yeah,
and
they have to be electric. It's the green nonsense again.
Yeah, again, it's big government telling them how. So these truckers can't be traveling on California roads, or they're going to face a fine. It's not because we have these 18-year-olds can't drive. It's not because the ports can't handle the traffic. This is why, and I believe this is why DeSantis said, hey, all you ships, come here to Miami, come here to Florida, we'll unload you, go through the Panama Canal, we'll unload you over here.
Yeah, he's talking out his butt. I just want to say this real quick because everybody keeps saying DeSantis should be vice president.
No, I'm
no more rich white guys.
John. I'm saying, because you also got Abbott should be saying the same thing. Mobile, Alabama should be saying the same thing. All those Republican red states that are along in the Caribbean and in the Gulf should be the ones who are saying, come to us and unload here, because they don't have these crazy wackadoodle restrictions like they do in California. It's time for California to face the financial crunch. They shouldn't get the port fees. They should be going to those red states. Those should be, because those red states are going to take the the ships and they're going to unload them, and the tractor trailers are going to go from there. John, that's what should be going on. We're at an hour, and that's all I have to say for that, brother.
Just on Mark Robinson, though, he's on the short list who should be vice president for Trump when he runs. It should be him,
who?
Colonel West, Mark Robinson,
Okay.
North Carolina. You just played him.
Yep.
You just played him. Mark Robinson, Colonel West, or of course Larry Elder. They're on the short list. Put them as vice president, not DeSantis, not another white guy. Put one of them as, and then when Trump steps down after 4 years, the Republican Party can destroy the Democrat Party, which the evil party, by driving a stake through its heart, about and have the first black president run, not the fake white guy who's, let's face it, I'm blacker than he is.
John, I have a question though. I think isn't the Virginia Terry McAuliffe running because he's saying that even though he's term limited to 2 terms, he can run for this time because it's not consecutive. Isn't that what he's saying? It's not consecutive, so he can run
want Trump
again.
I think Trump only wants to prove a point, and so it'd be 4 years. But I guess the Virginia's had a black governor already, at least one in blackface or Klan robe. We just don't know which. None of them, the baby killer. But it's time. Enough with the DeSantis talk. It's great. He's doing great. That's all. But he can't. President 20 years from now, 30 years from now, got to destroy the Democratic Party, the evil party first, and do that by putting in the great Colonel West, the great.
I think any of the people you mentioned,
Eldersky, or Mark Robinson, who
they'd all do a great job. I think that's fine. I do think though, it's Trump's to pick at this point. Hopefully he picks somebody he can rely on.
Just remember,
he couldn't rely on Pence.
We're going to be in 5 years of hell, but if it was worth it to not Reagan, the Reagan Revolution was undercut and destroyed by the Bushes, and if it was worth it to get rid of Pence, if we have to go through 5 years of next year, 5 years of hell, it's worth it. So that the Reagan Revolution, the Trump Revolution, isn't destroyed like the Reagan Revolution was destroyed, because that's exactly what would happen with Pence. I called it from the beginning. And he was, he's Rhino. He's got Rhino written all over him. Him and Romney are twins. Ugh.
All right. So, ladies and gentlemen, I just want to say thank you for watching. As long as you have, like and subscribe, share this with your friends, get the message out. That's the only way we're going to be able to take back our country. Wednesday, we have the Cycle of Mayhem in plain sight with AJ Hayes.
Yeah, awesome.
I want to reference that as well. It's going to be at 8:00 or 8:15. I should say, and please feel free to check us out then, and we'll be rebroadcasting both shows later on this week. On that note, it's all good, brother.
Because God loves you.
Because God loves you.
The world will know that free men stood against a tyrant, that few stood against many.
Knucklehead idiot Fauci was on TV today. I think he was always on TV. Today he was saying some kind of nonsense that if you're not wearing a mask, you're violating other people's civil rights. It's the exact opposite, but what you expect from a totalitarian.
What we have today in China, the authoritarian monstrosity that is trying to take over the world, that wholeheartedly believes that every kernel of dirt on the planet Earth and underneath, and every human being living on the surface and beneath the surface of the Earth is Chinese property, including, John, the moon, the Mars, and all the skies are all Chinese property. That's what these authoritarians think, and that's what their goal is, to take it all over.